Hello. Hello, I can hear you. Thank you for speaking with me. My name is Howie. Uh, I wanted to speak to you about my status. Well, I would describe it as subhuman, but a lot of people don't like to use that terminology. Right, I will try. Bear with me. Yeah. I have severe behavioral problems caused by a brain injury. Uh, OU. I'm offensive and unpleasant. It means that I beg your pardon? Yes, to everybody. And because of that, I'm very unwelcome. Well, oh, pardon? Yeah. Well, I'm just supposed to like not. I'm supposed to avoid situations. And the problem is the most. The how can I put it? The most seizure-inducing situations are my family and confrontation. So what I find very difficult is this. Uh, how can I avoid my family to stop them being offended and so that their lives remain very pleasant? And what is difficult about this is that we all automatically assume that we're human beings. But, and so in our day-to-day conversation and the way that we speak and behave, we all automatically assume that each one another are pleasant and unoffensive. And so our conversation revolves around this type of a lifestyle. But for me, what's particularly difficult is to realize that I'm a subhuman and I shouldn't assume wrongly that I'm a member of civil society, for decent society. That's what is particularly difficult for me. That, yes. Yes, but yeah. Yes. I beg your, uh, well, the problem is this. Superficially, it seems that there's nothing wrong with me. However, in certain situations, I can't function. I lose my mental capacity. And no, they don't. They are aware of it, but they don't accept it. And they demand. They absolutely demand that I don't behave in the way which I behave. Well, even though I'm aware of my shortcomings, it's very difficult to pull myself away from those situations because those situations occur when I'm doing things that are very important. And if I don't do those important things, terrible things can occur. And preventing my children from being wrongfully deported from their own country to somebody else's country where they have no family and would be left homeless. Yes, because I cannot live with my family members because that causes me to have seizures. So some do, some don't. And the, no, no, I've never lived with any of my children because of my condition. I acquired my condition in 1990, and I didn't start acquiring children until 1994, 4 years later. And I have memory problems. I need to stay on track here. Bear with me. Nobody ever told me don't have a family and don't have children. So, if we lived in a world of genetic hygiene or whatever these rules are, that were fashionable 100 years ago or something, then, they would probably castrate something like that, or the courts would brand me with a, Star of David or a Star of Disabled People to say that don't make sure this person doesn't end up in any family relationships. But we don't live in the eugenic world. Well, but and the terrible thing is that one is automatically drawn towards having a family by one's biological nature. And unfortunately, that without a family, I don't seem to have any identity. For example, everything I do in my life revolves around looking after my family. And it does cause a lot of problems. For example, there's a whole slew of things that my family object to, apart from my behavior, that I eat out of rubbish bins and I sleep on the street. Somewhat. Yes, but part of the problem is this. Everything is compartmentalized. There's an autism support group. There's a traumatic brain injury support group. And there's mental health support groups. But I don't fit into any of those categories. No, and explain the reason why is because I have a neurological brain injury, like people who've had carbon monoxide poisoning or encephalitis. And so these things don't show up as traumatic injuries on MRI scans and EEG scans. No, they would be just like ordinary human beings who don't accept, oh, offensive, and you. Um, what was the you word I used? That's unpleasant behavior. It's not acceptable, even in the brain injury people forums and all that stuff. So, yeah. Well, yeah, in theory, but the difficulty is that if there are certain aspects of the brain that cannot learn that, then it's how the doctors taught me in 2005, just to avoid situations, because there are certain parts of the brain when they're damaged, you can't. The only way you can deal with it is not to learn something, but to avoid situations. And it's very difficult to avoid your family. And all of my major problems, of course, when I'm mobilizing, mobility and speech are impeded. And so when I'm trying to get out and about, and I'm a homeless person, so I'm almost always out and about, I'm forever getting into trouble. My mom, my brothers, my children, the mothers of the children, just about anything that's kind of like to deal with emotions. Okay, so Stella certainly has brought up one daughter in a good and acceptable manner, and Lucy has certainly brought up her children in an acceptable way. They're acceptable and decent. One of them has ADHD, and I'm constantly trying to guide him. And let me see what else there is. And the last one is, the other one is, it has a 2-year-old child, and so it's a little bit early. I mean, I have criticisms of her that she gives the children sweets, sugar things all the time, which I object to. Well, something else probably I object to, but can't remember. Well, you can never tell until the children kind of grow up and become their own person. Well, the children end up being strangers to me. They grow up, and it's like they're just not really. They're people identified as my family, but I never live with them. But to be honest, the eldest boys are complete slobs. To be honest, the mother herself when I first met her, lived in slovenly conditions, and it seems to have fed into the boys that no matter what I do, they refuse to stop using the kitchen sink as a bucket for all their rubbish. Every time I go into the kitchen, it's full of old dirty things. I can't use the sink because it's full of their rubbish. No matter how many times? Yeah. Yes. Well, the reason I'm phoning up is about it's my problem is I can't, I find it difficult to know my place. That's the problem for me because I cannot consider myself equal. Well, I accept that on a kind of legal basis, but the problem is that I'm not the type of person that people can take anywhere because I would cause them embarrassment. I do, but the problem is remembering that I have a brain injury, so I cannot fix. I cannot fix my mind into this. What will I get me the right word? Into this subhuman. Uh, like for it. Okay, I give you some examples. Ah, my NHS wheelchair has not been repaired for 8 years. Uh, what I find difficult because because I can't communicate with the NHS authorities about the repair of the wheelchair. They're insisting they I don't know, they pull bureaucratic stunts and God knows what and excuses. Yes, I do. And well, I don't really have a doctor because I've been expelled from all of their surgeries. So, and what I believe is that there is no provision for me, whether I was brain injured or not. They just wouldn't have any provision. And huh? Well, I don't know. I just believe that society just doesn't have the resources to spend on people that society in general thinks are useless and unworthy. And um, let me get the right words for it. Okay, the services that I require don't exist because most people in my situation are in comas or they're like they're just easier to treat as a fool or just to dismiss. And so the I can put this somehow other way. The services don't exist because people who are very lowly can't be assertive because they're too much of a burden to society, and any cost that would be required to help them would be deemed by the, what do you call it, like those people in insurance companies, the loss adjusters, as why should we help this person in a coma or this deeply disabled person? Because the help that we could provide is not financially efficient, and we can spend that money better elsewhere in a more efficient manner. Why to create other people who are probably going to be more productive in the end? It doesn't matter if I've got 3 university degrees. My level of brain injury is such that people don't accept my behavior, so don't put me in any kind of workplace. Just stick them on a benefit somehow, or something like that. It's just, you do things in life to try and make progress, and the problem with a brain injury such as mine, nobody tells me I've got a brain injury, and I'm left being completely confused about why I can't hold a job down, why I'm constantly being thrown out of places. Well, that's what but the bottom line is then I shouldn't try to work because it brings out the unpleasantness and the offensiveness in me. But it's like, I don't know. It's yes. They diddled me. When my children were being deported, I couldn't deal with my case files. My lawyer wasn't helping me, and I asked them to help organize my papers. They charged me £80 and organized my papers in a way that I couldn't even use. They didn't even know how to help me. All they did was, and they rearranged my papers in a way that I couldn't sort out anymore. No, they can't, because I don't have any diagnosed condition. So how can they possibly help me? I can't tell them I've got a frontal lobal brain injury because I don't know really even if I've got one, because nobody's ever diagnosed it. It's not. Frontal lobal brain injury. But I don't. But I have the behavior of somebody who does. And on top of that, a few weeks ago, I went to see a specialist, and they acknowledged that the type of situation that caused my brain injury does affect the frontal lobes of the brain. But the problem is that that's one person I've seen in 35 years. I don't feel so. I don't feel really it is, because without a proper diagnosis, you cannot be put on a proper pathway of rehabilitation. Like, for example, the NHS has treated my condition as mental health. So they try psychological treatments. But the problem is psychological treatments don't work for people with my condition. So it's pointless what they do. No, it's wrong. I explain why. The doctors, with the psychological treatment, the doctors told me to avoid situations. So that when my children are abused and it causes me to have seizures, I'm supposed to abandon my children. But what am I supposed to do? If how, how can I get well again if I have a permanent condition? No, but let's say put it this way. I try to describe. I try to describe to you, right? So the government deported my family, and the person the court sent my children to kept telling me to take my children back to Wales. And I said, I can't because I don't have any support. And the children were just like on the street. And eventually they ended up being abused. I was then told to go to a certain police station. It took me 2 days to hitchhike across Europe. When I got there, the police started shouting at me because I fell asleep in a police station. I had a seizure. I got amnesia. And then I forgot which police station it was, and I could never find it back again. So you have to understand that I have this permanent condition that takes away my mental capacity. So when my children are being abused, I can't help them. In their 20s, well, one of them has one of them has ADHD. The social services don't do the slightest thing, okay? I went to the social services. I put my son in a boarding school. I asked social services to help pay for it. They refused to pay. And after a year, there wasn't enough money to pay for the school fees. And so they threw the child out. He ended up having no O levels whatsoever. Yes, and so I don't know, he's born in 98. That's 081828. He's nearly 30. And I'm still have to pay for his living, his accommodation, and um, his food and everything because no, because otherwise he has nothing. He can't claim benefits. He has ADHD. So he gets occasional jobs. He can't because he can't. He can't. It, you don't seem to understand. He can't. He has a very patchy work history, and I most of the time I'm just looking after him. They don't do anything. Well, anyway, um, the matter is made more complicated by the fact that I have to have a guardian in order to regain my mental capacity. Yet the guardian, yes, but they abandon me because they can't cope with my behavior. No, as I said, the when I go to the doctors, the NHS say it's mental health. They give me psychological, which doesn't do anything. It just tells me to abandon everything. Then I went to the epilepsy specialist. They said it can't be treated with anti-epileptics because it's not epilepsy. And I've had this problem for 35 years. I'm 62. Aye. So the problem is that, I can put it so different, it's not easy to say. In order to get a guardian, I had to enter into a relationship with a person who had to become pregnant and produce a child, which was the only way to bond us. And now I have to abandon a child. But I can't do it. The problem is, what am I supposed to do now? My doctor is telling me to get a new guardian. And that means I would have to make somebody else pregnant again. They don't. They just say go. They say go to the social workers, and the social workers don't even know what a guardian is. Since I discovered I needed a guardian in 2011, I have reported at least 36 social workers to the social work regulators for not knowing what a guardian is. They don't. Yes, I accept that. My doctor. Let me explain to you what the doctors won't have anything to do with me because of my severe behavioral problems. So how can they contact the doctor? Hang on. Stick with me. I've just dropped the telephone. Could you just hold on a second? Bear with me. I'm so sorry about this. Right, I've got the phone. Since I had a doctor from up until about 2011, until the time when I needed a guardian. And when I needed a guardian, and I tried to contact the doctors about it, my seizures were so bad that they just removed me from their patient register because they said, because of the offensiveness and unpleasantness. And since then, I've had 50 GPs. 50. So when you say go to your GP, to be honest, I don't know who my GP is. The last GP, I went to them and I said, bear with me, that I'm trying to get some training for my guardian. They said, go to the social workers. I went to the social workers again. Again, they didn't know what a guardian was. So I ended up having to create, because of course I have, now I've got 14 years of experience in trying to find a guardian and 3 years of having tried to work with a guardian. So I create my own training program, but there's nobody to train my guardian and nobody to train me how to train my guardian. So I'm just saying, and the last GP I spoke to said that, well, my guardian could easily abandon me, or, they could have an accident. I need another guardian. Then I basically thought, well, how the hell am I going to do that? So, no. I'm talking about a guardian. They're very passive. They're very passive. Basically, in my opinion, rightly or wrongly, probably wrongly, in terms of the law, but rightly according to medical issues, They're somebody that I live with on a daily basis, and therefore they understand how my mind works and how I think. And then whenever I'm declared as not having mental capacity, they can just speak up for me. But it's a very passive role. They don't do anything at all except handle issues of non-capacity. No, I don't. One of my brothers emigrated to Germany, and I tried to get some help from him, and he just said, "Don't contact me." And my other brother tried to look after my children and handed them over to the police and the social workers, and that's how they ended up being deported. So I think he has autism or something. So the problem is, and then another social worker I went to see suggested that my daughter becomes my guardian, the one who had been deported. But I can't. But the problem is, I can't. I've never lived with her, and I wouldn't be able to live with her. The only. Let me try and describe the type of people who the only people who would tolerate me and hold me into a relationship are people. I don't know how to put this. People who are illegal immigrants, people who are illiterate, people who've got medical health problems, people who've got sexual problems, people who've got drug or alcohol problems. But they're not they're not members of decent society who are capable of supporting me. Decent society would have nothing to do with me. So, for example, the last person I met in the museum and ended up in a relationship with, they had a baby that bonded us together, that kept me, they were very demanding on me. They demanded I attended antenatal clinics. They demanded I cut the umbilical cord and everything like that. They demanded I put them I paid for their housing, all of their clothes, everything. Going to the spa, the hairdresser, whatever it was, I had to pay for that, everything. And then they just, like 6 months ago, just disappeared. They said I was renting a house for them where I could stay sometimes. And then they said, "Okay, I'm moving." They said, "We're moving." They made me pack up the whole house. And then we stayed in a hotel for 10 days. And they said, "I'm off, don't come with me." And that was it. And it caused me a terrible trauma because I didn't have anything. I was very reliant upon this person to base my life around them. And without... Yes. Well, you know what? My MP is the one who used those words, OU, offensive and unpleasant. And they're the person who threw me out of their surgery back in 2011 when my daughter was being deported. So the problem is, no, they're still there. They've got a safe seat. And, the problem is that their view of people like myself is just generally Parliament's view of people such as myself. It's everybody's view of myself. My elderly mother, who just cannot accept my behavioral problems. She keeps telling me to shut up or I'm going to give her a heart attack, she keeps saying. But that's not the point. The doctors. I'm not an uncalm person. I have a speech and movement disorder that cannot be medicated. I do know that because that's what the epilepsy doctor said. Look, I'm telling you that between 1990, probably, and and today's date. I went the other day, I mean, a few years ago, I listed all of the doctors I had seen. And there was like, these are consultants, not just GPs. There's at least 200 consultants, neurolinguists, psychiatrists, psychologists. And I'll explain to you the reason why they can't help. Because in the books that they use to study, I have to be a little bit slow here and get it right. You have mental health problems and you have other issues. And the problem is that I'm not an illiterate person. I have a master's degree in law that I got after my brain injury. And when I study those books, my type of problem is a type of problem that people who've had carbon monoxide and encephalitis have, but it's long term. Nobody studies how long term, how these problems develop over the long term, or how long they're supposed to last for. And my particular type of problem was caused by a coma from malaria. And you can read in the literature that people from West Africa and the Caribbean have a condition. And in the French literature, it's called bouffée deliriante. And in the Spanish literature, it's called attack nerviosos. And in the diagnostic manuals created by the United Nations and the American Psychological Society, it just says that these are cultural conditions. And of course, malaria is rampant in West Africa and the Caribbean. And so they are not making the link. This is just a link that I form in my own opinion. And when I went to see this doctor at the Hospital for Tropical Diseases in Antwerp a few weeks ago, he said, "Yes, I recognize your condition. I haven't seen patients like you for many years." And so it's a known issue, but because it can't be seen on an MRI scan or an EEG, they find they cannot class it as a traumatic brain injury. But there's certain things in the brain that can't be seen on these types of scans. And so when people study things, they study mental health or they study traumatic brain injury. But if you've got a neurological condition that kind of falls somehow in between all of these things, they're not going to study it or learn it because it's just a small thing that doesn't fit neatly into a category to be studied. And therefore, well, you know what? The satisfaction I got, whether I'm deluded or not, is that he at least recognized the problem. But, well, he mentioned to me at the time that he was going to ask some neurologist or something like that he knew something about this. Because from my research, if the speech and movement problems I've got are psychogenic, then you can treat it with psychological therapies. But if it's triggered by trying to speak, or if it's triggered by movement, then it should be treated by pharmaceuticals. So they tried the psychological treatments 20 years ago. So he said he would try contacting some, I don't know, neuropsycho, whatever it was. I can't remember the term he used. And I don't remember what the problem is, because I have memory problems. I didn't record the conversation, but I did write to somebody shortly afterwards, summarizing what had gone on with this particular doctor. But on the pathway that I'm going at the moment, that I'm supposed to just isolate myself and not have much contact with people. And it was good when I had a guardian. Okay, it was very difficult for them dealing with my behavioral problems, but at least they could pay the bills, pay for the rent, and there was, even if I wasn't bathing or anything like that, at least there was somewhere I could go and base my life around. And but the, but you know, it's just a temporary thing. I can't just go and find another relationship. Relationships are they're not things that you can just, what's the word? Snap. I don't know. I don't know what the. I can't remember what was said, whether we're going to make another appointment or what. Uh, it's very easy. It, no, I didn't. But what I did do was I wrote to somebody who I was like a social work type of person about what was talked about in the meeting, so I can just go back to those notes. But the yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. If he's organized enough to do something like that, and also if the people he contacts have actually got anything different to offer. Mm. It's a point. It's a point. The thing is, I often find when it comes to these um, consultants, I was trying to do that the other day, and the thing was, I managed to get that appointment with this particular doctor. It was somebody told me about the doctor, and then that same day, I went on the website, and lo and behold, I could log on to the website, and I had an appointment with this chap the next day, and I just jumped on the Eurostar train. I was there and had my consultation. It was that easy. But when I tried to do it again, I couldn't find my way back to that same website. It was very difficult, and I don't know. A lot of the time, I try to find an English version of this doctor. There's a guy called Dr. Samuel Wasmer, and the problem that I've got, he's based in London, but he's not a treating clinician. However, from my research, he's the person who probably knows the most about the type of condition I've got. Yes, well, I'm, these people are very busy people. They have lots of different clients. I could just easily be forgotten about. I don't know. I find it very difficult to try. You see, my problem is when I try to pursue things, I end up having seizures and I get amnesia and I forget what I'm doing. Yes. You're a very helpful guide. I really appreciate the way that you've spoken with me. I will go to I will go to my notes after this conversation and try to to develop a way forward. and try to express my difficulties and what my concerns are about why things might not work, to see if I can find any alternative ways to move forward. But yes, thank you very much for speaking with me. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye. You too. Thank you. Bye.